Hi, and welcome to the Changing Perspectives podcast, the show where we discuss a variety of topics including grief, parenting, pop culture, and relationships. Join us and explore a number of changing perspectives. We're your hosts, Jenni and Josh Brennan. Hey, Jenni.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good.
Are you sure?
Yes. Kind of weird times we live in right now, but I'm good.
For sure.
For sure. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 58. We're back with everybody. Welcome back to the studio, Jenni. Been a couple weeks since our last episode dropped.
Just a couple?
I think so.
Remember.
February 24th. So through 2.5 weeks.
That was like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lots has happened in the world since then. We had a community grief episode. I thought that was a good episode. Talked about how our local community experienced a tragic loss and how you respond to it as a community. And what it means to grieve as a community. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go ahead and check that out. Before we dive into today's topic, just a reminder, we still have our t-shirt photo contest. You can tag us on Facebook and Instagram with a picture of you listening to the show or a screenshot of you listening and be entered into a drawing to win a Changing Perspective t-shirt. There are some great merchandise available on our website. You can check that out. We also are still reading iTunes reviews over the year. So your iTunes reviews are going to be featured on the show if you're interested. I'm making a commitment to read any brand new ones that come through. So if you drop us a quick review and we will read it over the year. So Jenni, what are we talking about today?
I have no idea.
Yes, you do.
You're the producer person.
Okay, that's true. We're talking about something that's on everybody's minds right now. The world has stopped. I think that's the best way to describe it. The world has come to a halt. Things are canceled. People are a little nervous, a little scared, unsure of what's going to happen. Quite literally, the world has changed in the past week. So we are going to be talking about how to discuss this and restore hope when it comes to parenting.
Okay.
And this is based on your blog article that was just published to our website recently this week.
Mm-hmm.
The beginning of the week.
And on Medium.
Yeah. Oh, and on Medium. Really?
Yeah, well, I published it on Medium. I don't think
perfect.
It was picked up. Medium's changed, and now they take longer to curate and review. So I don't know if it's picked up by a publication on Medium yet.
Okay.
I haven't actually looked.
So your article is entitled Managing Children's Anxieties Around COVID-19, 9 Strategies to Restore Hope. Very timely. I think it was very important for you to put these strategies together, especially now that schools are closed. So schools around the country and around the world, quite honestly, are closed.
Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Most of them.
I don't really know that we could say most of them, but a lot of them.
A lot of them. And things are canceled, sports, gatherings, events, parties, all kinds of things. So more so than I think even a week ago, a few days ago, this episode and your article is important because we're going to be facing moments, we're going to be home with our kids. Kids aren't going to be at school, so it's going to be our job to discuss this with them. And these are some tips that you can use as you have that discussion.
Yeah, we might have to shift this a little bit because things, when I wrote that on Monday, today's Saturday, changed a lot in terms of sort of the general public's knowledge of what's going on.
Right.
So I will jump in and sort of try to adapt it now. Because when I wrote it, there weren't many places that were closed for an indefinite period of time. Where we are, our district is closed for at least 2 weeks. The Boston district is closed for 6.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. So, and when I wrote it on Monday,
it's like summer.
We were like fully in the transition from basketball season to AAU basketball season and lacrosse.
Spring lacrosse.
Right. Yeah. So the transition from winter sports to spring sports, and now that has come to a screeching halt, which I actually think is harder for our family, for our boys. The notion that there's no sports to watch on TV, there's no sports games to go to, and there's no practices or games at all in the near future. So I think that's really hard. So I'll sort of fold that in.
Speaking of your writing, I wanted to shout out the fact that you have been picked up by a very popular blog and Facebook page, Scary Mommy.
Yeah, I mean,
you want to talk about that for a second?
Only 4.2 million followers.
Yeah, something like that. That's exciting.
Thanks.
So Jenny's, a couple of her articles are going to be featured.
One went live
already Thursday.
Mm-hmm. One's supposed to go live. I have to check my email. The 22nd, the 20-something ish.
Okay.
I will post it on our
we've been pushing it on
page.
Our social medias.
That other one is about pet loss and talking to children about pet loss.
So that'll be good, and that's going to be on the main page. But that's really cool. So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. The more people get a chance to read your stuff and get exposed to your writing, the better. So that's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The one that went live yesterday is kind of a weird timing. I mean, obviously weird because of everything else that's going on.
Right.
But weird because it's an article I wrote, it must have been 2 years ago, about transitioning into parenting a middle schooler. So, we're at the end of the school year. So I think I will repush that as people get closer to the next school year. And there are people out there that are really kind of struggling with that transition from elementary school to middle school or junior high.
Yeah, it's an important topic.
Oops.
Oh, so you didn't turn your phone off?
I put it on airplane mode. So what happened
really?
there? I will just say that the U.S. travel ban now includes UK and Ireland.
Interesting.
And a task force says that coronavirus testing will be free for everyone, which is fantastic, except there are none. So whatever.
Well, that act just passed. I think that's what that is.
Yeah, but there's still not enough.
I know.
We know people that have told us yesterday, like, the doctor thinks I have it, but they can't test me. So
Right. And people are being told to stay home instead of come in. So, but I wanted to start off by reading a section of your article here. It says, for many of us, this constant news cycle can be overwhelming, as we just saw.
That was very timely, right?
Tapping into our already somewhat heightened levels of anxiety. For those of us that are parents, we have an added layer of concern. How do we explain the current state of affairs to our children and provide them some sense of reassurance? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to go through each of these, and I'll read them, and you can chime in, Jenny, with your thoughts.
Sounds great.
Is that cool?
Mm-hmm. Is that what now?
Is that cool?
Yes.
This is now the Mary Kay counter.
I don't, nope, this is not Mary Kay stuff, but I am multitasking and doing my makeup at the same time.
But right before we hit record, Jenny says, can you get me my makeup bag? And I was like, why? And you said, I can multitask. And you're doing it.
And I am. I'm almost done. I'm finishing up my eyes right now.
Okay. So tip number one, strategy number one is be honest. You write, as with most things, I'm stumbling over my words today. Children know more than we think.
As you do on most days.
Okay. Children know more than we think they do, and they crave honest information. As much as I want to shelter my children from hearing about the potential bad things that could happen, now that they're in school and in sports, this is not a reliable option. And I would add social media. They're talking to their friends constantly. We talked about this in different episodes, but, Jacob this morning, I'm pretty sure, has had multiple conversations, FaceTime with multiple friends already. We're recording this in the morning or midday, and he's already had a bunch of different conversations with his friends. He's not even in school. So be honest. What are your additional thoughts on that, Jenny?
Well, to make sure you're being honest in a developmentally appropriate way and in an individualized way. Like, one of our children, and I won't say which, tends to be more of a feeler and worries more actively. And so will engage in a lot of questions with us. And so for that particular child, he sort of needs more information. The other child needs sort of a baseline level of information. Right. So kind of knowing what your child needs so that you're not bombarding them with information is really important. But, understanding that they know more than you think they do. They're hearing you when you're talking to each other. They're sort of hearing you when you're like, oh, that alert says travel is banned, to your partner or on the phone to your friend or something like that. So make some time just carve out some time to talk with them about what they know about what's going on and what questions they have, and then answer their questions honestly.
Right. Well, I think too,
and that might mean you need to do a little bit of research. And research doesn't mean like check your social media feed, but actually like go to some reputable sources here.
And I want to say that there's a bunch of great podcasts out there right now that I've dropped this week about COVID-19, Corona.
What are they?
I'm going to shout some of them out at the end.
But what's their expertise? Are they someone that's a reputable source?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. And the BBC is just a really great, just basic facts news source. They've got a podcast right now. The CNN, Dr. Gupta he's got his own podcast. I think it's Fact versus Fiction. There's a couple other ones out there that I'll shout out at the end. I was listening to one, the Bill Simmons podcast had Malcolm Gladwell on, and they talked about a lot about the implications to society, and sort of the after effects. Anyway, I think dive in, do your own research. Don't just look at the news feed. Don't just click on the first article you see. Make sure that you spend the time, if you want to, and provide your child with good information, that you should get good information for yourself. The other thing I want to add too is a lot of the time, Jackson will come out of his room.
I wasn't naming names.
I
wasn't naming names.
We've named our kids a million times on the podcast. He'll come out of his room and say something like, I just saw this happen, and it's a story that's completely incorrect and blown out of proportion. And so I think part of that, be honest, is correct the misinformation that they're being given.
But so he's a child that shares, he knows this, he's honest to a fault. Mm-hmm. So he will tell us everything eventually. There are probably lots of children, like our other child, who would see something on social media and be like, that's interesting, that happened. No, but then not talk to us about it. So it's interesting. That's why I said check in with your child. What do they know about it? What are they hearing is an important question to ask. Because sometimes that stuff is right? Like when we were driving in the car, I don't know, when did Kobe Bryant die? And our youngest was like, Kobe Bryant just died. And we were like, that is not true. But some of what they read on social media is true.
So you end that first strategy with when parents make the decision to provide their children with honest information, there's better control over what and how specific information is shared with their children. So be honest. Okay, strategy number 2. You ready, Jenny?
I'm ready.
Watch what you say. So on the flip side, be mindful about what you say around children, not just around your own children, but when you're out in public. You don't want to be that person who exposes another child to information their parents had not yet shared. Exactly. I mean, you want to be the person that disseminates the information or the message that, you want to not make up the message, but craft the message. And because you know how your children, your own children, how they receive information the best, right? How to present information, frame the conversation.
Right. Well, and it's not our responsibility to provide that information to other people's kids. And also keep in mind that you should be talking with your children about how they should be talking with their peers. So it's not their responsibility to share some of this information with their peers. That should come from their peers' family. Mm-hmm. So, kind of adding that layer in there.
Right. And I think be honest, but also be mindful about parts of the story, parts of the facts that may or may not be really critical to share, but would do more damage with them knowing, right? Like we don't want to scare them. You want to be honest up to a point where you don't want to cause undue anxiety and stress in your children.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah. It's a balance, and that balance is going to depend on a lot of factors, most notably your child's age, their individual circumstances, their personalities. Right.
Okay, so strategy number 3 is considered development, sort of on those same lines. You had mentioned this a moment ago. Children's emotional and cognitive capacities develop significantly throughout their childhood. Before sharing details with them, take their developmental stage into consideration. A 12-year-old will want and need more specific and detailed information than a 7-year-old may need. Avoid going into too much detail or overwhelming them with details. I guess I was jumping the gun a little bit with what I just said, but, and you end that point with let them guide you on how much information they need, right?
I agree.
Yes.
With myself.
You agree with yourself.
Sometimes.
Yeah. No, I think that's super important. Sort of let them guide the discussion. A lot of with many of these things, we talk about how to talk about grief and loss with children and other different things like traumatic events. And it's sort of the same thing.
Well, this is grief and loss and traumatic, right? So kids, when we look at children and what they need when they're grieving, they need consistency and routine. And if you're a child who's just been told you have no school for 2 to 6 weeks, you've just lost all consistency, all routine. Mm-hmm. And if you did any extracurricular sports or clubs, there are kids who were ready to sort of launch their like, what do you call it? Like a show, like a theater, like opening night was just supposed to go down for those kids, and now they don't even get to perform their show. Or kids who had worked and they were about to have their championship game like today, and suddenly their season's just over and there's no championship game for them, so they're just done with their team. Thinking about and that's true for college kids too. So we're thinking about like the Semester at Sea group. We did a Semester at Sea, live on a ship for 100 days when that was 20 years ago.
Study abroad program 20 years ago.
That current voyage has been cut in half, and they were told with 3 days notice, hey, we've just missed 6 of our ports. No one else is going to let us in. Everyone has to get off in South Africa, and good luck, find your way home. So they had 3 days to wrap up a huge sort of time of their life. All those college students who were basically told like, hey, don't come back from spring break, or come back and you have 3 days, get your stuff and you're gone, and figure out a way to have classes online, but go do it at home. Mm-hmm. Like sudden changes, sudden loss. So this is really grief, loss, trauma.
Right. Yeah.
And that's, if you're someone who lives with a medically compromised person, or has someone in your family, a parent who's going through cancer treatment, or who has some sort of diagnosis, this is a really scary time. So I think all that stuff we talk about when we talk about children's grief applies in this circumstance.
Yeah, I agree. Let them guide the discussion. I think that's a super important point. Be ready, willing, and able to have that discussion. Have the good facts ready when you do your own research. But also don't force them to know too much, or just don't read their cues, their nonverbal cues, right? If they are not engaged, or not really talking to you, don't seem like they want to hear it. They don't want to hear it right then. Right. But just be ready when they do. Okay. Strategy number 4, and just to remind everybody, we are reading, going through Jenni's blog article.
We're what?
Reading.
That's a hard word for you to say.
Reading's not a hard word.
You didn't say it. You said like weeding.
I didn't. I said reading.
I don't think so. We'll have to play that.
Wow, really getting on me this episode. Managing children's anxieties around COVID-19, 9 strategies to restore hope. This is Jenni's blog article that was just published on Medium and our own website, and we are guiding folks through these strategies right now. We are now on tip number 4, be a role model. Let's face it, children learn a lot from watching their parents, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Show your children that feelings like anger and frustration are normal. But you're right, if you are angry, name it. Be sure to not only show your child that it is normal to feel emotions, but also demonstrate acceptable ways for them to express those emotions. Yeah, that's a super important point. Being a role model, and not just in this scenario, but most scenarios, but especially here when we're talking about this life-altering, world-changing event. This is a historical, one of those moments in history where you'll go, I remember where I was when blah blah blah.
Right.
And that's what this is. So how you choose to handle it and respond to it in your own way, your children are going to watch that.
True.
So yeah, do you have other things to add about being a role model?
Listen, what we're experiencing right now and I don't know how evergreen this will be if for people that are listening 6 months down the road,
Mm-hmm.
is people kind of freaking out and hoarding toilet paper. And I saw this morning, one of my friends posted that they were at a store and they bought 2 packs of toilet paper, and then they were yelled at by a woman who said, what are you doing? Why are you buying 2? What about the rest of us? And she said, I'm buying 1 for my family and 1 for my parents. So keep that in mind, that be a role model in those times too. How are you handling your own anxiety about this or your own frustration around this? Are you lashing out at others? Are you being kind of selfish? Are you offering to help others and your children are seeing that? Are you being mindful about the fact, basically, are you checking your privilege too? Right. Yes. There was an article that I saw yesterday about, is your privilege showing? Because some of us are really fortunate. We've got a lot of privilege, and kids being home from school for 2 to 6 weeks is something that we can roll with. Being able to work from home is something that we can roll with in the professions that we're in.
Right.
But there are lots of people who can't, who don't have really any options for food. I was really happy that our district kind of delayed their decision, I think, in part, to make sure that they had a plan for those kids who rely on school to provide at least 1 or 2 meals a day. Because there are, in Boston, the statistics, what did I say last night? They were 8% of the students are homeless in the city of Boston, and 70% are economically disadvantaged, and rely on 2 or more meals a day to come from the school. That's huge. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of families for whom shutting down schools for a day and having to cut back on work is a huge financial burden for them. So keep that in mind. Are you having conversations around that? Are you checking your privilege? Are you being a role model in that kind of way for your family too?
Well, I think too, with being a role model, we see a lot of folks that, quite frankly, Jenny, just don't quite get the severity of the situation. And they're minimizing it and saying things like, everybody stop worrying, just use some hand sanitizer and go about your business. And, you sort of really downplaying and not quite understanding. But there might be people that are listening
right now that have that viewpoint.
Right. What I'm saying is, though, quite honestly, you need to learn more. That's just the bottom line. It is a bold statement. You need to learn more about what's going on. It's a serious, the illness itself, COVID-19, is not that serious. It is serious in immunocompromised people and elderly, but it's how easily it spreads. And this is a pandemic. It's a global pandemic, and that's the reality of it. And we do have to take extra precaution. We do have to make plans and take care of the folks that need to be taken care of. So I guess my point is, being a role model, be careful of what you say to your kids when you start to share wrong information, and be critical of people that are taking the measures like buying their parents toilet paper,
Okay. And also, I guess, checking when you say things like, well, it only affects old people and immunocompromised people.
Right.
That, I'm sure a lot of us have elderly people that we care about and we love about, and immunocompromised people in our lives that we care about and love. And not all of those immunocompromised individuals or individuals with a compromised immune system, that we don't always know that from looking at someone. So you may be saying that to someone who is currently undergoing like chemotherapy, or is about to start chemotherapy and now it needs to be delayed, or has a condition that they don't share with others that they're really now at risk for. So keep that in mind too. Be mindful about what you're saying. But in terms of the sort of responsibility about educating yourself, I guess I want to pull up what one of my friends just said. She's a sociologist, so I will pull that up while I'm trying to talk. I think people don't know where to go for. I don't think people know how to educate themselves in 2020, where everything is at our fingertips.
Yeah, and what's, is this the article that I'm reading the right article, or versus the next article about it? What's the source? And it's always tough to really know, especially when there's so much out there. There's so much content out there.
Right. She said, she's a sociology professor, public health requires that we sacrifice individual freedom for the collective good. And I think that we're forgetting that. And that's a really hard concept for Americans to understand. I'd be interested in talking with some of our listeners who are overseas, who are not Americans, that concept, because that sort of individual freedom is such a core American value. That's sort of like, I'm going to get my toilet paper. I'm not going to rely on anyone else to get me the toilet paper. And I don't care if others, I mean, I care, but really when it comes down to it, like, I need to make sure I have toilet paper. That's a very American notion. So that whole concept of public health requires that we sacrifice individual freedom for the collective good. That collective good, that really goes against sort of American values in many ways. So I think people are struggling with that. That kind of like, well, I feel healthy. Why am I going to keep my kids away from the mall? Or why am I not going to go out to eat? Or why shouldn't I buy 75 rolls of toilet paper? So I guess educating yourself about that, I guess, is a responsibility.
Yeah.
But then I've struggled this week. I'm getting off topic.
It's okay.
I've
We're
struggled.
allowed. It's our podcast.
I've struggled this week with what is our responsibility for providing education, right? Because you and I are sort of on the inside when it comes to medical stuff. You work in the medical field. I work in the medical field. I'm an educator. I see a lot of people who are in it. And I feel like I do my research. I don't really watch mainstream media. I know how to research.
Yes.
Because I love researching. So I'm going to go, I know how to get direct source material. Not everybody does.
Right.
So what's our responsibility when someone says, oh, it's just the flu. No big deal. No one's really worried about it. Nothing bad's going to happen. What is our responsibility to provide education? I struggled with that this week.
Yeah. What's the answer?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
Because I don't think I have an answer. I guess it's a case-by-case basis. There was someone in our family yesterday who reached out to us and was sort of just talking about how things were going and kind of opened the door a little bit and said, like, they don't really know what to believe. And because of their circumstances and because of what people around them had publicly stated about their beliefs, I went back and forth around, like, they're really misinformed. Should I educate them? How is that going to be received? Is it going to be received as like, oh, Jenny's just being a know-it-all and telling them things.
Right.
Jenny's being judgy. And it's not that at all. But ultimately I went with regret, which is ultimately how I often make a lot of difficult decisions. What am I going to regret more? Am I going to regret more saying something and them being really ticked off and angry and not wanting to talk to me for that again or something? Or not saying something and having them continue to move through with their miseducation and ultimately...
And not be as risk averse as they should be.
Right. And ultimately for that group, I decided I'd feel worse if I didn't say anything.
Right.
And what are the chances that someone else is going to provide that insight to them? Thinking about sort of their makeup and who surrounds... Like, there's nobody else, I think, sort of close enough to them that would have that information. So I shared it. It was well received, and hopefully they're making some changes.
Yeah.
But there are lots of other people that I encountered along the week who minimized things or thought that, my viewpoint was sort of overreactive. And I chose really not to push back because ultimately, like, I don't really think they were as in need.
Right.
Like, and I think that they'll come to that decision on their own, potentially. So I don't know. That's been a hard sort of road to walk down this past week. Also seeing people on Facebook and me wanting to be like, oh, well, here's a YouTube video from like the head of the ICU at a hospital in Lombardy, Italy, who's being hosted by the Journal of the American Medical Association. Pretty insightful, on the ground people.
Right in it.
And that's where we're potentially facing. But then I can't tell you how many times I like posted it and as a comment to someone and then deleted it because I don't really know that they're not really looking for information. They weren't saying like, hey, I'm confused. Right. Can someone point me in the correct space?
They don't know that they're
I'm
confused.
Externally processing right now, which is a term that I shared with a patient this week for the first time. They'd never heard that before. And they were like, oh, that is what I do. So I'm externally processing right now.
But it's something that people, I guess, I just want to encourage people to do the research and to seek out the good information, the real information. Johns Hopkins has a great website. It's like a interactive tracking map of COVID-19.
Are you sure that's the right one and not the one that's the scam that's going around?
No, there's a scam.
Mm-hmm. That looks like an official tracker.
No, I'll pull it up and show you.
I meant to tell you about that because I know you shared a tracker in one of our groups the other day.
Yeah.
But it kind of looked like that.
If you look at a lot of the trajectory of what's happening here in the U.S. is pretty much the same exact thing that happened in Italy.
Right.
And so as bad as
Northern
it got,
Italy.
As bad as it got in northern Italy.
Wow, you are.
I am struggling
marble mouth
talking today. Wow. We have to get in the studio more so I have more practice. It's going the way here as it did in Italy, based on what the predictions are. So really, it's important to be that role model, to be honest with your kids, to provide the right information. You have to do the research to find out what's going on, and sort of not walk around. You can walk around with blinders on if you want and just focus on, lean into the time off with your kids from being home from school and bake cookies and watch Netflix. And I mean, we plan on doing some of that too, but,
I want to bake cookies.
Yeah,
I was going to have us buy the stuff for those 2-day chocolate chip cookies.
Oh yeah.
Our oldest found a recipe for it's a 2-day process to make these cookies.
I bet you they're amazing.
Yes.
At the end of it.
Well, we have 2 weeks with them home.
To each their own. If you don't want to do the research, that's fine. Just wash your hands, keep that social distance, 6 feet, and make some right decisions. But if you want to be honest with your kids and provide the right information, do the research to find out. Okay, we get back to the list here.
Yes.
All right. So strategy number 5 in restoring hope with your kids is reassure, reassure, reassure. Every time you write something like that, I always think of our semester at sea.
Cape Town tomorrow, Cape Town tomorrow, Cape Town tomorrow. Yes,
That's
the
great.
night before we would arrive in a port. Our
Dean.
It was the dean. Yeah. Lloyd would get on the overhead announcement and say whatever the name of the place we were going.
Yeah.
So it'd be Kobe tomorrow, Kobe tomorrow,
Yeah.
Kobe tomorrow, just like that. Yeah.
I love it. All right. So you're right. Children need to feel safe, and the adults in their lives are the ones who are tasked with that monumental responsibility. It is kind of, it's scary to think about how much of a responsibility we have in making them feel safe. Yeah. I'm not advocating for you to tell your children that nothing bad will happen to them or near them ever, as that would be a lie. You cannot predict the future. You can, however, make lots of noise. You can, however, point out that good stuff happens far more often than the bad stuff. Remind children of all the people and systems in place to keep them safe and all the healthy people around them. You keep saying that, I think. I just wanted to point that out. I don't know if you realize that when we're having discussions with our 2 boys about what's going on in COVID-19 and Corona, you keep reminding them that the likelihood is that we're going to be fine. We're for people that are younger. We're healthy. We're not immunocompromised. We, the 4 of us, will be okay. You keep saying that, which I think is important in the setting of being honest with them and telling them what's really going on. Hi, Norma Jean.
She needs a blanket on the floor.
But I think reassuring is something that you do very well. And it's something that you can be honest and share the facts, but throw in those moments of reassuring and little phrases to remind them that we're here for you. We're going to do our best to keep you safe. And the likelihood that you're going to catch this is low.
Well, no, the likelihood that you're going to catch
that
this
you're going
is
to get
high.
sick. That you're going to get sick is low.
Is low. And also, for those of you that have immunocompromised or elders in your family, acknowledging that those are the people that are more at risk. And that is why schools are closing and people are being asked to work from home to sort of make it more possible that if those people get sick, that our hospitals can handle it. And really, that's ultimately what it's about. It's about protecting our healthcare workers and healthcare industry so that, and I don't mean so that they can make money. I mean so that if even a small percentage of people get it and become ill with it and need hospital and ICU level of care, they need to make sure that there's enough hospital staff to provide that care, enough supplies, enough ICU beds. They're not having that in parts of Italy because they didn't prepare for it. The surge happened all kind of at once. That's what it's about. So, people can get this and recover as long as we have the tools in place to do it. And so reassuring kids, like, even if someone gets really sick with this is why we're doing that, so that our hospitals can handle it.
Right.
So again, that kind of goes back to being honest, right? Rather than just saying like, everyone's going to be fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Because then if something does go wrong, well, then you've essentially kind of lied to your kids.
Yeah. And you're like, wait a minute, you said everything was going to be fine.
Right.
You end that section by writing, highlight safety measures that are in place, and they express fear over attending a certain event. Repeat as many times as necessary. When you think you've said it enough, say it one more time. Yeah. All right. Number 6. This is tougher and tougher to adhere to this one, but you write, limit media.
That one
That's
is
hard.
tricky.
Yeah. Television, news, social media accounts.
Maybe I should change
newspapers.
it and say like monitor media. Be aware of media. I don't really know how realistic it is to limit media.
Maybe just be honest about media and how there's a lot of sort of incorrect information out there.
Yeah. Okay.
But you're right. There's nonstop, around-the-clock coverage of the virus outbreak. Pictures, video, audio clips. It's all out there, and it can quickly become too much for children. Be mindful of what children may be exposed to, and consider whether it is necessary. Yeah. A lot of people sort of crave that coverage. When when I was driving around in the car earlier today, I knew that all I wanted to do was listen to something about what's going on.
We were here before when we were talking about Kobe Bryant and community grief.
That's me.
So I don't know that it's fair to say a lot. I think it's fair to say some. You crave that information and you sort of consume it voraciously. Like you really need it.
I want to know more.
I don't. Like if I get in the car, I'm gonna listen to the rest of the episode of Reality Checked about Vanderpump Rules, even though it's an episode you and I have not watched yet.
Why do you do that?
Because then
spoilers, man.
Because
you don't. How come? Why don't you care about spoilers?
Spoilers make it better.
No, they don't.
They do. Knowing what was coming with The Bachelor this season, knowing that there wasn't a clear winner and things were going crazy, that helped me to really fine tune what I was paying attention to when I watched it.
This is not a Bachelor podcast.
It could be.
No.
Oh my gosh, it should be.
No.
They've already broken up. We need to dissect what happened
Spoiler.
on the last episode.
You're binging it now.
Peter's mom. If you're binging.
I don't know any of these words.
You do, because I showed it to you the other night.
Names.
The mom. The mom.
Oh yeah, the mom. Yeah. No, we're not doing this.
Okay. But so that's the kind of stuff that I'm craving right
now.
Like
I like that stuff too. But I also want to take the opportunity to listen to what. I was shampooing the rugs the other night, and I listened to 10 mini BBC episodes about Corona.
Oh, see, I would just listen to music with something like that. I guess I don't like to hear. I like to read it. So when I'm on my phone, and this is how I've been getting my information the past couple weeks, is I will kind of go and curate the information and find it and read articles about it. So in that way, I do like to dive into. So I guess it's about the modality. I prefer the written word and reading articles. You prefer videos and podcasts. And so I can't get written words when I'm riding in the car, right? So I like to listen to music and total nonsense. Radio and podcast. But when I'm reading, I like to read about this stuff.
That makes sense.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
What was that connected to?
Limit media. Even if you think your children aren't watching the news with you, or you don't see the headlines in the newspaper, think about what they may overhear from the next room, or what they may see when the newspaper is left casually on the kitchen table. So just be mindful of it's tough. Again, we recognize that it's tough to limit media. Be mindful of the media they're consuming, right?
Correct.
Okay. Strategy number 7, in restoring hope in the setting of, with your children, the setting of COVID-19. Number 7, create an open dialogue. Children need time to process things. It is not unusual for children to need days or even weeks to develop questions or be able to express their thoughts on difficult topics. Send your child the message that you can always find time to talk with them. Many parents have success by carving out time each night around bedtime for an opportunity for children to share their experiences, thoughts, feelings, and ask questions. So yeah, I mean, we've talked about this in other episodes, but with sports schedules and things going on in our busy lives and work, we relish those moments where we actually do get to sit down at the dinner table and not doing meals on the run. And we have instituted we always enjoy talking, and we do those conversation cards now. I think we talked about it on another episode.
Oh, I should share those on our page.
I thought you did already.
I don't think I did.
Okay, share those.
Let me send myself an email right now.
But we also use those moments as an opportunity to discuss sort of current events.
Oh, those would be really great for people to have right now during
I know. When school is off.
During the shutdown. Yeah, okay. I will share those at some point.
So
Sorry, am I keeping you up?
No. Sorry.
Josh is yawn.
I did yawn. That's fourth wall stuff. No one heard the yawn. You didn't have to tell everybody.
People like the broken fourth wall.
Okay. Yeah, so when I outed you as doing your makeup.
Yeah.
So
don't I look less horrifying right now that I have makeup on?
You always look beautiful, Jenny.
That was the correct option.
Yeah. So yeah, using those moments like we do at the rare occasion we get a chance to sit down to dinner, talking about current events and being honest and open and being ready to talk when they're ready to talk, creating that open dialogue. I think that's really important. You also write here, these conversations tend to be better received when they focus on one child at a time, rather than as a family dialogue with multiple children of various developmental stages. That's a good point. I think our kids, as different as they are, I think they do get something out of talking together. It's just the 4 of us. They're only 3 years apart. So they're developmentally, they're close.
Yeah.
But I think that for us, it works when we're all together. But I think that's a really good point you make about, you might need to have these conversations separately, especially if you've got children that are far apart. Like I know our good friends have, their oldest is 10 years older than their youngest. So that's something they definitely can't have that they have a 14-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 4-year-old. So they can't do that all together in the same setting, right? They have to have a discussion separately because their kids are at different developmental stages.
That is an excellent point to keep in mind, the sort of individualized sort of makeups of your family.
Yeah. You have to be able to, cater the conversation, cater the message to meet the kids where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And you might be in a family where you have, kids that are way far apart in age, so you have to make that decision. Okay, we have 2 left.
Okay.
Number 8, point out the positive. Despite what we see on a daily basis, there are lots and lots of great things that happen locally, nationally, and internationally. Seek out the good stuff and share it often with your children. Can I just talk about how cool it is that what these NBA players are doing?
Yes.
The NBA shutdown is, if you don't know that means you're asleep, I think, probably.
Or you don't care.
Or you don't care.
The NBA.
It's everywhere, though. The NBA shut down, which means not only are the players not playing, the fans aren't in the stands, but everybody that's associated with putting those games on, that work in the arenas and the centers that host these games, are not working. They're not making money. The vendors, the custodial staff, the people that take the tickets, the people that make the food. And a lot of these, one of them in particular, Zion Williamson from the Pelicans.
Who's only 19.
Yeah, unbelievable. They are donating money to support the salaries of these people in their local arenas. That's huge. That's such a positive thing. I want to shout that out. That's something you can talk about with your kids, point out the positive, seek out the good stuff, and share it often with your children, is what you write. Highlighting the positives can also go a long way to helping children feel safe. No amount of good stuff is too much. There was another, you had already mentioned our school district offering lunches and meals still, despite the schools being shut down. But there was another story.
Responsibility. But there are quite a few restaurants actually that are, local, kind of smaller mom and pop restaurants who are offering some variety of free meals for school-age children during the shutdown, which I think is beautiful and wonderful.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about an industry that is going to be potentially hard hit with a shutdown, right? Like restaurants. Or if we're supposed to be social distancing, people are theoretically, the further we get into this, I think, going to be spending less and less time at bars, at restaurants, at pubs. And so that means that those workers who are hourly workers are going to have less pay.
Mm-hmm.
So for them to be offering that is really beautiful. Maybe also partially, to sort of get some advertising and show people that they are a good place for them to sort of frequent. That's good. Sorry, teenager just barged in. He's like Kramer from Seinfeld. He
really
just busted in through the door.
He's got a similar haircut too.
Let's just call him Kramer and we'll see if he figures out why. So he just threw me off because he busted in. I guess ultimately I think that will serve them well, these restaurants who are doing that, because people are going to say, oh, I remember they did this nice thing. And they're going to frequent them.
Right.
It made me do that. There was another one I saw this morning and I was like, oh, I forgot that restaurant exists. That's really cool. We should go there.
Which one?
The barbecue place in Abington.
Oh yeah.
See, I always forget it's there.
I might know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they have beer though.
Does that mean that's a requirement for you?
No, but like it.
I just like it. They're like a takeout joint.
Yeah.
They're like a quick serve.
I wish they were like I wish they were more. I wish they were like a bar
restaurant.
Yeah, like a restaurant bar.
We might need to talk about your alcohol consumption.
I'm
not
just
joking.
Saying. But like we it's not, it sort of takes out an option of like a date night. You know what I mean? Because there's not a lot of seating in there. That's all. That's what I meant by that.
This is called backpedaling.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Okay. Tip number 9. Monitor behavioral changes. Keep a watchful eye on your child's behavior. Changes in sleeping and eating patterns may indicate that your child is having a hard time processing some events and information. Changes such as suddenly wetting the bed again or asking to sleep in your bed could be a normal response to stressful information. Be careful not to shame your child about changes like these. Rather, give them some time, continue to provide reassurance, and keep a watchful eye. If you are concerned, reach out for support. Your child's school, pediatrician, local child therapists are all great resources. That's a good point. That could be a little scary, not knowing, not realizing behavioral change. You might be annoyed by something or frustrated that they're not doing something, or they seem they're bummed out, or they're lashing out maybe in an aggressive way or misbehaving, but it could be that they're just nervous and scared and anxious about what's going on.
True. Same can be said about adults too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Do you have anything else to add on monitor behavioral changes?
I would actually add to monitor your own behavioral changes too.
Yes.
That this is a stressful time for adults as well, whether you are a parent or not. At some point, in some way, this is impacting you, whether it's, your job is saying you can't travel, or your job is saying you have to work from home, or your job is saying you can't come to work because you coughed twice during a shift and now you have to take your own time off or something, or whether you are a parent who now has to kind of figure out how you're going to provide childcare for your children. It's impacting people regardless.
Right.
That's stressful. I think it's really important to acknowledge that. And I sent the morning sending each of my patients, I think all of us have gotten emails from anyone that has our email address, right? Like I got it from the bagel shop we went to in Florida last year.
Yes, I did too.
Did you get that?
I
About
did.
like how we're taking care of COVID-19. Thank you, bagel shop. I don't care. Or at like everything has sent us one. So of course, you know, I had been thinking this week that I have to talk with my patients because I'm officially offering all of my patients online therapy because all of the insurances that I'm contracted with right now will pay for online services, not just in person. I think in person is the best. And so I'm still going and showing up and I'm going to be there in person for my clients. But if they would feel more comfortable not leaving the house, or if they've got kids that they don't have childcare for, or if they're sick, or if I get sick, I have that option. So I spent the morning, instead of sending like a mass email like we all got for everything else, I sent them all an individual email and then a text. Where was I going with this?
I don't know, but that's really cool of you.
Well, I care about
You're a
my
good
patients.
therapist.
What was the point here?
I'm not quite sure.
Where it monitor behavioral changes. Oh, and so I said in there that it's really important to continue focusing on your mental health and your physical well-being, because I think it'll be really easy for people to be like, I'll just put therapy on hold right now. And in the moment, that's going to be okay for you until it's not, and it catches up with you, and you sort of, it all kind of spills out. So I think it's really important that people continue to take care of their physical and mental health. Listen, if you're someone who like loves your group fitness classes, you know, think about the version of us 3 years ago. We would go to 6 classes a week.
Yeah.
We'd be at the gym for 2 hours. That's probably not going to be an option for a lot of people moving forward. But that is, for a lot of people, their identity and their socialization and their stress relief. And so if you don't have that anymore, you're going to pay for that in a way. So when I'm saying monitor your own behavioral changes, like check, how is this impacting me? You know, kind of really, how can I take care of myself if the typical ways I take care of myself are not going to be there anymore? If I really love the sort of group that I ride on the train in to work with, what am I going to do when I don't have that every morning?
Yeah.
If I really love sitting at the, you know, the cafeteria at lunch and having lunch for 20 minutes with my coworkers, and I'm not going to have that for 2 weeks, what am I going to do to sort of replace that? That's really important. So I think adults need to focus on that too. Wasn't really feeling that on Monday because I suspected this is where we were heading, but I wasn't ready to say that on Monday kind of publicly. So
you just reminded me of how scary it must be to think about needing to take public transportation in the setting of this. Like I remember,
maybe for some people.
Well, I remember when I used to ride the train regularly for school and work, sometimes depending on the time of day, I would literally be on top of each other. I mean, you're just next to each other. There's no space in between at all. It's like, how do you, I think
now there's a lot of people working from home.
They won't be taking the traffic and
I
everything.
I think your commute to work this week is going to be a breeze.
I know, it should.
Mine too, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can leave earlier because I don't have to make a school stop.
There you go.
And I don't have to. This is
right. It's all you're realizing. This all.
This is
in
also.
real time.
I think this probably goes hand in hand with sort of monitoring behavioral changes. Is also what's number 9 before I jump ahead.
That's it. That was it.
Oh, that was it.
Yeah.
I would say. So I would add a number 10, and I have an article in my head. I don't know if it will come out, but in my head, if I have a chance, I will write it between now and Monday about sort of how to manage this and how to sort of change your perspective, right? Like with anything, clearly, I think that's important.
Full circle.
Is there a way to change our perspective about this? I'm going to not have that be a closed-ended question. How can we change our perspective about this? Because I think we need to. We can look at this and we could be like really ticked off that this is happening, really frustrated. We could feel this is stupid. We could feel this is overkill. We could feel like this isn't enough. We could feel this is a huge, inconvenience. We could feel like we're terrified about how this is going to impact our kids, sort of mental health and how this is going to impact our kids' sports seasons and how this is going to impact our vacations. Like we have a vacation, the two of us, that we've been looking forward to that might not happen now. All of that, we could kind of focus on that. We also, because all of that's valid, we also can look at it and try to figure out how can we change our perspective on this, and is there a way to sort of find a way to feel differently about this, or is there a space that we can create where we can find something positive from this? Well, now I get to sleep in a little bit. for the next 2 weeks, and I don't have to quite be. So here I can kind of catch up on some of my sleep deprivation.
Right.
Here, our schedule is going to really be kind of released, and there's not so much pressure. Like, we're going to be home to cook dinners and not have to worry about like who's got practice and where. And oh my gosh, our oldest is leaving the house at 7 a.m. and not getting home until 9:30 because of triple practices. Like, there's some space to kind of breathe. Oh, we finally have time to probably finish that back bathroom and get the paint supplies out of the extra shower, and actually paint the trim and redo the ceiling in the kitchen. Like, there is opportunity here. Don't roll your eyes at me. This is a great opportunity for that.
I know acts of service is your love language, but
that damn ceiling.
I think for me, quarantining and staying home equals Netflix. That's what it means.
See, for me, it also equals like, let's get
and
some
recording.
stuff done.
Changing perspectives, fans, be ready for some episodes.
I would like to commit to doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like on my days where I go into the office a little bit later, those mornings now aren't spent with like running the kids to school and trying to get caught up on some house chores, because we've got this other space. So there's a way to kind of look at this in a different light. There's some parents that are freaking out and saying like, how can I sort of keep my kids from sliding back academically? And there are other parents who are like, I'm just gonna, sort of lean into this right now.
Right.
And there are people who are saying it's all different, but trying to find a space to sort of find the positivity here. This is an opportunity to reconnect. And I will say, I think the four of us, our family, we look back really positively and fondly at that time.
I know what you're going to say.
2 years ago? Was it
2 years
last
ago.
year or 2 years ago?
I think it was 2.
Probably 2 years exactly. It was right. It was in March, 2 years ago, kind of early March, because wasn't it right around Cole's birthday?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There was just a random windstorm that knocked out power, and then it was super, super cold.
Remember we lost a fence too? That was crazy.
People lost everything. Trees, people had trees fall on their houses. The power was out everywhere, and it was out for like 3 days. Schools were closed, businesses were closed, people were freezing, and we had to, it was a huge inconvenience. We had to, the four of us, live in our living room because we had no heat. So what we did is we brought a mattress out into the living room, because that was sort of the biggest area that we could sort of cordon off. We hung like comforters so that we could sort of maintain heat in there.
Mm-hmm.
We had no TV. We had to limit the use of our cell phones. The cell phone lines were down, so our data was really limited too. And so we had to light candles, and we played board games and told stories, and we all slept in the same room. Like the boys slept on the couch, we slept on the mattress, and we all look back really fondly of that time, right? It was a huge inconvenience. And it was scary because we weren't sure, like, our pipe's going to freeze. We lost all our food. We would try to find like what restaurants are open that has heat that we can go to for a little bit of time. I think there's possibility that we will look back on this time. Certainly it's a longer time, and maybe have some of those same memories. It's kind of like the people that live in the Northeast that remember the blizzard of 78.
Yeah.
And they talk about that experience of sort of being shut off from the world and also taking care of their neighbors. They lived through something really special. And I think that we're living through something really special right now. And there's opportunity for it to be a good thing. Wouldn't it be a great story if America and other places in the world saw what happened in China and Iran and Korea and Italy and made some changes and made some adaptations and made some sacrifices, and it worked, and we did sort of slow the spread so that our hospitals didn't get overwhelmed, and the hospitals were able to provide the same level of care that they would have were it not a pandemic.
And we figured out how to plan for something like this in the future. Right.
And we figured out that like we can do this. Like, wouldn't it be great if if that's the story? And we got to spend time together and, figured some stuff out, and businesses were propelled forward and figured out, hey, maybe letting our workers work from home isn't such a bad thing. Maybe it does increase productivity and morale. Like, maybe this could be a good thing rather than focusing on it being this scary thing. So changing perspective. That's sort of what the article in my head is
I like it.
In a little way.
Little sneak preview, everybody.
We will see.
Teaser.
We will see.
Teaser article. So before we end this, I just wanted to bring up a couple of podcast recommendations about COVID-19. So the Bill Simmons podcast, I don't want to...
Who is Bill Simmons?
Bill Simmons is a big podcaster.
Oh.
I don't really listen to it, but he's very popular. Think Mark Maron, Bill Burr, like he's very Joe Rogan. He's up there. He's not a comedian, though. He's just a news guy, I think. Anyway, he has Malcolm Gladwell on, who I love. I love his podcast and his books. He has The Week COVID-19 Changed Everything. This was just released on Thursday. Malcolm Gladwell's his guest. He's from HBO and The Ringer. Bill Simmons. That's who he is. But anyway, so that's a good a good episode to listen to. Also, Joe Rogan had a gentleman, Dr. Michael Osterholm. Michael Osterholm is an internationally recognized expert in infectious disease epidemiology. He's a professor, an author. He's an expert in this field. So great podcast episode that was released on Tuesday with Dr. Michael Osterholm on the Joe Rogan podcast. And then, of course, I had mentioned this earlier, but the BBC and CNN have coronavirus-specific podcasts, not just episodes, but the Coronavirus Global Update put out by the BBC World Service. Really, really good podcast. Very, very digestible 5-minute episodes, just really all the big news items about coronavirus and what's going on. And again, CNN has that fact versus fiction with Dr. Sanjay Gupta available as well. So check out, obviously we're a podcast. We are podcasters. And I get a lot of my information from podcasts, and that the coronavirus pandemic is no difference for me. Anything else to add?
No.
Okay.
I always feel like I should have something to add at the end when you ask me that.
No, this is
I very rarely do.
Good length episode, lots of information. Bottom line is, I think the takeaway message is be honest with your kids, be there, provide them with reassurance that things are going to be okay.
Yeah, so I guess I do have something to add. Don't assume that like it's not a big deal to them. Don't assume that oh, like they get to have like some time off from school, they don't care. This is a big deal for a lot of them. You know, there are kids that really enjoy school, that really love the socialization, kids that crave that structure. There are kids that have a harder time on the weekend, and that's because it's not as structured. And so don't assume that the kids are kind of cool with this. For some kids might be really scary. Yeah. Like, why is the world coming to a close? You know, we're 40. Don't remember anything like this ever happening in our lifetime. And when you're so interconnected, it's really easy for it to seem like the world is ending. You know, kind of like all that zombie apocalypse stuff feels like this is probably what it is supposed to feel like right in the beginning stages of that. Right. And that can be really scary for kids. So remember that the kids are kind of feeling this with their little kid brains that are, you know, so adept at magical thinking. And if you're not giving them the information and you're not paying attention to it, they're going to fill in the gaps, and the gaps with which they fill it in are probably going to be scarier than the actual reality. So think about that. Have conversations about that.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Jenny.
You're welcome. Before
we end things, I just wanted to take this opportunity to read an iTunes review. And Changing Perspectives podcast is coming up on our year anniversary, by the way. I forget exactly when it is, but it's like coming up. The 31st was our first It's one. Coming up soon. And so the iTunes review I want to share with everybody came out right around that time we launched. And the title of this is My Favorite New Podcast. This is from J.E. Cat 2019. That's the username. They write lots of great information on a variety of topics delivered in an entertaining way. Short and sweet. Thank you for that great review. Again, please send us your iTunes reviews. We'll read them over the air. Okay, everybody, that is going to do it for today. Thank you so much for listening. For today's show notes links, you can check out Jenny's article on our website, Managing Children's Anxieties Around COVID-19, 9 Strategies to Restore Hope. Please follow us on Facebook, everybody, at Changing Perspectives Podcast, and on Instagram at Changing Perspectives Blog. You can send us an email to changingpodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit our website by going to changingperspectivesblog.com. And while you're there, don't forget to visit the shop to check out all of that great Changing Perspectives merchandise. Go ahead and subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode, and we will see you next time. Say bye, Jenny.
Bye, Jenny.
Are you looking to level up in life with your health, mindset, and personal mission statement? Are you a coach of a sports team or leader of an organization looking to build critical leadership skills for your team? If so, then look no further than GetBurley.com. The Get Burley brand offers life coaching, personal fitness programming, and team building retreats, clinics, and seminars, all designed to empower individuals and teams to become the best versions of themselves. The Get Burley Team Building and Leadership Development Division works specifically with athletic teams, corporate groups, and educational institutions. Through their signature seminars, workshops, and/or retreats, Get Burley will have your team firing on all cylinders and working as an inspired, cohesive unit, committed to the mission and vision of your program or organization. Get Burley will build the inner strength necessary for you and your team to gain clarity around your mission, input strategies to enhance mindfulness, amplify personal accountability and ownership, and much, much more. Do yourself and your team a favor and visit GetBurley.com. Get Burley. Be the best version of you.
The Changing Perspectives podcast is produced, recorded, and edited by Dizzy Bird Studios. Please visit Dizzy Bird Studios on Facebook, facebook.com/DizzyBirdStudios.